For me, it was really unexpected. I'd only been peripherally involved in the HIV movement prior to walking in the doors of AIDS Vancouver in 1993, and I wasn't quite prepared for how the movement, the organization, the services just gripped me, and it felt absolutely right to be the person, that frontline person responding to the individuals coming in really difficult circumstances with, and often with nobody else in their life to assist them. Some shifts in treatment options. There was increasing diversity of people coming in with increasing complexity. We were really beginning to address much more comprehensively the complexities of people's lives who were affected by HIV, some of the underlying factors of poverty, social isolation. The enduring stigma of HIV is still very much an issue, and food security. And so these became really important things for us to intervene upon. Most of the support programs for people living with HIV were volunteer delivered through an amazing group of volunteers. I do believe that those volunteers are a huge part of what inspired me. One of the volunteer roles was the direct support to people who were living with advanced illness. They would come in the door and ask for help, and I would make them an appointment with one of the volunteers, and they would work one-to-one with that volunteer to figure out what it is that they needed. But around that time, there was increasing sense that the people who were coming in the door had really complicated and complex situations that became difficult and for the volunteers to respond to comprehensively. So we identified that there was a need to shift case management support from a volunteer-delivered service to a staff-delivered service supported by volunteers. I moved out of my role as administrative assistant into case management. I researched models from around the world and worked with the team to figure out a model that would work for us, and then that became the AIDS Vancouver case management program.
Everything I ever needed to know about life, I learned as a case manager at AIDS Vancouver, doing direct frontline service provision. Again, this is not a world I didn't know about. I came from being that involved. But the sheer magnitude of what we were dealing with in case management at the time, this was a time when some of our caseloads, up to 300 people, were quite often street involved and palliative at the time that we were trying to help them. Our job, as best we could figure it out, was to fix it. We don't really have a plan, we don't have a manual. Find something, find housing, find income security, find a way. We were not in a fantastic position to make this magic we were trying to pull off happen, and yet we did. It was a phenomenal experience, and we were one of the first ASOs to basically pilot that model, again, kind of a cutting edge thing. But every now and then I hear, and this is like in the 2010, 2011, like 20 years later, I'll hear someone at a medical conference, which I still attend in my current work, say, you know, we've got cutting edge case management models that we're just introducing. And I say, you know what? AIDS work 20 years ago, we were all over it. We had no idea that we were inspiring the kind of revolution in even mainstream healthcare that continues to be at the cutting edge. The idea of the program was we didn't want to just do talks in high school and those kinds of things, because that was critical, of course, but we wanted to do professional development work with service providers who were particularly impacted or working with populations that were affected by HIV. So we wanted to know not just that we were doing good work on prevention in prisons. We wanted to know that prison guards and that prison administration had appropriate policies, and that we weren't just talking on the level of prevention, that we were doing something constructive in terms of support and policy and universal precautions and all of those things. So everyone from hotel personnel prior to the International AIDS Conference, where again, here you've got this major AIDS event happening in Canada, you don't want an incident in the hotel. There weren't a lot of places you could get this information. A lot of the materials that we were generating, we were the first in Canada to do so. The idea of switching to kind of a professional development angle was, we understood at the time, completely unique in Canada, and it was my great privilege to be on the ground floor to help shape that program.
The grocery program was another interesting one, entirely volunteer-driven. It has been since the beginning and continues to be today. What I love about the grocery program is it's consistently used mostly volunteers to our grocery program recipients themselves. And this really speaks to the core of that program, which is an empowerment model. And early on, when we were developing the grocery program, we realized we didn't want to have a program that was based on just shoving bags of food out of a window and providing people with, whatever was in that bag, but giving people an experience to shop for themselves. So the program was set up like a store, and the building in of choice as much as possible into that program was really important.
The grocery program is absolutely critically important. Nutrition is a key element of people who are in treatment and who are on medication. And AIDS Vancouver has struggled to keep that program alive and to be creative in how it raises money to provide that service to the community. And Park, as I knew it in 2005, was a library that was housed as part of the AIDS Vancouver program and the AIDS Vancouver budget. And the library, in my estimation, was one of the best libraries globally. And so the Park Library in 2005 was a center that documented the evolution of the pandemic as we know it. All of the early artifacts was all housed there. And I felt that it was a very important resource that needed to be preserved. But unfortunately, that library was dissolved. And I feel that that was unconscionable. And I think it's a huge loss, not only to Vancouver, but to the global AIDS awareness and knowledge bank.
So I remember vividly, because I'd already been with the Training Institute for some years, going to this conference and watching a presentation talking about criminalization of non-disclosure of HIV in a case called Courier, a case that would eventually go to the Supreme Court of Canada and would set the legal test for non-disclosure to sexual partners for many, many years. And I was in the audience listening to this presentation, realizing, oh shit fire, I'm gonna have to go to law school.
Being part of the community in Vancouver is really a privilege.
It gripped me then, and I didn't know it at the time, but it turns out that I would never leave the movement, and here it is 20 years later, and I'm still here and getting inspired every single day.